Welcome to SolFul Connections, where we skip the small talk and head right into the soul talk. I'm Amanda Solar, and each week we share the kinds of stories that remind us we're not alone. It's about being human, raw and unfiltered, just real talk. Let's connect.
Connection. Let's talk about connection.
So I am with Guryan Tighe, the author of Unmasking Fear, How Fears Are Our Gateway to Freedom. I love, first of all, Guryan, I love that title. I also noticed that some of your clients call you a fear technician. So I am all in because I am just a huge bundle of fears walking around, living in the world. So I'm so excited for our conversation today. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me, Amanda. I'm excited too.
So fear, can we just start off by a lot of people avoid their fears, avoid thinking about their fears, kind of try to subvert them. And even I would say avoid talking about their fears and even the concept of fears. So what drew you toward it rather than away from it?
Well, like you, I actually also, people I think find this surprising about me, but I also have a lot of fear. I recently read a line, all research is me search. And I think that's very true. It was actually what led me to fear wasn't fear, it was empathy. I actually sat down to build a model on how you could teach empathy, because while I think it's innate for many people, I think it can be taught. And it was actually empathy that led me to fear. And if we actually understand our own relationship with fear and the information it has for us, empathy becomes a byproduct. It's really fascinating. And so when I sat down to look at fear, it just continued to reveal more and more gifts. And to your point, people are afraid of fear. And so they don't turn towards it, which not only doesn't benefit us as individuals, but then systems can actually use that power, whether that be government, religion, business, all of it, to divide us, to encourage us to buy certain products that we need to feel more full. And so it's a really valuable area to have more understanding of.
My gosh, that is such a great insight that you just shared, because fear gives our power to others in whatever way, whether that's a system or an individual. In what way would you say we're misreading fears? I think we look at fear and we think, okay, don't do that. I'm afraid, so I'll just turn and do something else. In what way are we not kind of viewing it maybe as an invitation?
Sure. Well, first, let's start with a baseline, because there's just an understanding of fear that I think would be really helpful for people. So that fear that causes us to turn away, that's our rational fear. That's why we have an amygdala in our brain. That's the home of fight, flight, and freeze. So for instance, if you're in the ocean and a shark is swimming towards you, it's this reaction that's going to cause you to swim towards it and punch it in the nose or swim away. So that's actually meant to protect our survival. The problem is most of us didn't learn about irrational fears. Irrational fears live in the future tense. They're the what if. What if I don't get picked for that job? What if I end up alone? What if nobody likes me? What if? And so because we haven't trained our brain differently, it reacts the same way, which is fight, flight, freeze. And a lesser known one, but growing in popularity, is called fawning, which is when you appease the threat, which is the home of people pleasing.
Oh,
Very common.
yeah.
So what the invitation is actually, if there is rational fear and your survival is being threatened in that current moment, that is fear that we want to listen to and react to and make sure that we are safe. When it is not in the present moment, when it's that future tense, that's the irrational fear. And that's really the place where we could aim to have a healthy relationship and understand what it's showing us. And I'll take it a step further. So fear is in the business of protecting us. So again, rational fear, survival. Irrational fear, it's protecting you as you currently are. which means this version of yourself. So whenever somebody grows, steps outside of their comfort zone, moves into the next version of themselves, fear has to learn all about who the new you is. And fear doesn't like to do extra work. So its job is to keep you as you currently are. That's safety from irrational fears perspective. And so ironically, our fear is actually telling us exactly where we want to go and grow.
Love it. Love it. Kind of like a GPS.
Exactly. I refer to it as the PGS, which is your personal gut system.
Oh, I like that. Now, so when you said all research is me search, so when you were growing up, like, were you confident? Were you somebody who was fearful? What was your relationship to fear? What were you like as a child? What were you looking toward and looking for? It's
Yeah.
a big question, I know.
No, it is a big question, but it's okay. I think I was pretty fearful, whether that be fear of everything, fearful of the dark, fearful of spiders, fearful of how somebody was going to perceive me. And then over time, and we can talk about this a little bit, but fear and pain are really interlinked. And I bring that up because whenever we experience pain, it's like they're best friends. So our fear comes around and says, I'm going to make sure you never feel like that ever again for the rest of your life. And so we get kind of frozen in that time. And so when I was growing up, I had kind of a situation develop with my father. He wasn't very present in my life for a long time. And so I kind of grew the fear of rejection based on feelings of abandonment. And so that stuck with me, and that impacted a lot of my relationships over the years. Now, if we just like at that moment in time, I needed that fierce protection, but then this is where fawning would come in. So over time in relationships, I might be quiet about my needs to make sure that somebody wouldn't leave, or silence my own self to make sure anything at the cost of not being rejected, at the cost of not having that wound hit again, unless I understood that actually that was asking for my own healing and growth to look at and come to my own truth. You and I have had the gift of talking before, and we've talked a lot about authenticity. And so that pathway was actually leading me to discover who I was.
Yeah.
And so they're incredibly interlinked.
Do you think that you can kind of retrain this part of yourself no matter what stage you're in life?
I do. So this is actually one of my favorite questions. Thank you for asking. So I've worked with high school kids, and I work with people into their late 70s. And the amazing thing about us as humans is we can observe our own thoughts. We can actually unwire patterns from our subconscious to make different choices. It's wild what we can do. And there's a lot of neuroscience to this. So every time you make a decision, you fire a neuron down a pathway. And when you're in a similar circumstance and react the same way again and again, that becomes what they call a superhighway, in which the brain doesn't recognize there's a decision point. So this is when people might just say, this is the way I am. Right. This is just who I am. But actually, all we're doing is practicing something, but we're practicing something all the time. Now, going back to where I started, most of us have fear-based thinking patterned into us from society. Look at consumerism. You're not enough of this, but if you buy X product, you will be. It's woven in everywhere we look. Everywhere we look. And so a lot of this patterning, people don't even realize how much fear-based thinking that they have. And so really starting to understand, actually the most important word I think is in the English language is this word, which I'm holding up, which is pause.
Oh, yeah.
All of my clients have that on their desk, because that's where we can actually start to unwire these automatic reactions, pause, and move into intentional response and choice.
Yes.
That's where we can build these new pathways that actually help fear inform us, as opposed to have us avoid and turn away.
Yeah. The pause. It's important to develop a relationship with fear. It's important to change in that respect. However, it's hard, and sometimes we shy away from the hard stuff.
Absolutely.
But I think what you're also suggesting is that you can't really be fulfilled if you're living in maybe a state of fear.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I think because of the work that I've done with fear over the years, I think fear is an incredible teacher. And now when my fear comes around, it kind of it perks my curiosity to think, okay, what are you here for? What are you here to show me? What am I missing? What's the next step I'm ready to grow into? And so it is really important to have that relationship. And that might sound really foreign for people because it's not something that they've practiced. So I want to give a tool for you that might just help people even start to turn towards it. So a lot of times it shows up for people as a self-critic. Okay.
Yeah.
We have, like, one day I was walking down the street, this was about a decade ago, and I stopped myself in my tracks and I said, if any of my friends talk to me the way that I talk to me, I'd punch them in the face.
Yeah.
There's just no way. And so that day I named her Gretchen. Not that Gretchen is a bad name. When I was young, I knew a Gretchen that bullied me, and it started with a G. It gave me enough separation because the critic isn't a bad thing. It's a mask of fear. But typically we run critical thoughts on negative loops. And so if we actually turn towards it and understand the information for us, curiosity is one way that we can move from our amygdala to our prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex is the home of connection, decision-making, creativity. And so as soon as we sense that fear, so as soon as Gretchen comes around, if I can pause and engage her, I can get curious around what I'm telling myself is true, which is the story, and what is actually true. So I'll give you an example of that. Let's say I'm sitting here and I just say, God, I'm the worst granddaughter. I'm a terrible granddaughter. Or I turn towards Gretchen and I say, what are you here to show me, Gretchen? Oh, it's that I want to make an hour of uninterrupted time this weekend to call my grandmother. Okay, one was super helpful and it had a nugget of information in there for me. The other was kind of just cruel and negative. So really creating that space, that pause, and then turning towards and getting curious. Our irrational fears live in the future tense, so they're based in stories. So the two most important questions you can ask yourself is, what is true and what am I telling myself is true?
You know, as you're talking, I am thinking about many collective fears. And I'm thinking about what you said about, when you have people in fear, even governments can take advantage of that. And I'm wondering how, and if it's even possible, we help others. So is there a way, if you sense that somebody is making decisions or found, I don't know, their beliefs are based upon really fear-based thinking, is it possible to help in that arena, or is it only possible to really change ourselves and our fears?
I think both are true. If you think about it, communities are based in commonalities, right? What my work has shown me is we all have the same fears. We all have the same fears. They cross all lines. Whatever line you bring up, my work has shown me it just obliterates them.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it is the way that we converse with each other and the way that we understand. And so, for instance, in conversations where people might be either led by fear or just in a different perspective than you, oftentimes the tone is around what somebody stands for.
Mm-hmm.
If we just shift that to understand what is it that you're protecting, all of a
Oh,
sudden it's a very different conversation that can be had, and we can start to see that I don't think we're as far apart from each other as many want us to believe.
right.
And so, but we're not asking the right questions, and we're not really listening. I mean, I think it's so fascinating that we're taught to speak, read, and write, but we're not taught to listen. It's kind of interesting. So
Yeah, that's a great point. And thinking about fear, you're not even taught to really listen to yourself.
definitely not. Definitely not. And that's some of the most rewarding, the rewarding work that I've got to benefit from witnessing is as people turn towards their fear. One of the gifts of this work was when I started, it was a hypothesis. I didn't know. And so the gifts of fear just continue to reveal themselves to me over all the years that I've been doing this work. And fear really leads you to who you are. Without all the shoulds, because think about how young we are when we start being put or jumping into boxes of what your life should look like, what success looks like, what happiness looks like, what all of these things looks like before before many of us even know who we are. And then many people wake
Mhm.
up and turn back and they say, I don't know how I ended up here. Right.
Right.
But our fear is, if you have a direct line to your intuition, you are getting messages on where you want to grow. Your fear is telling you the same thing through ironically telling you where not to go. Because we could
Yeah.
be scared of everything, but we're not. We're all scared of different things. And oftentimes, going back to that thread before, they feel so real because there might be pains that you've experienced
Right.
that fear is trying to protect you from.
Right.
So really understand. And one more disservice that I think was happened, but I think it was a disservice to put the pursuit of happiness into the declaration, because it did two things. It took happiness outside of ourselves and put it somewhere out there to go and get. And secondly, it put a negative stigma on all emotions that aren't good or happy.
Yeah.
In actuality, emotions are just information. When you're angry, you care about something. You care about something that might be stepped on or a value that's threatened.
Yeah.
But most of us don't even know what our values are. So we focus on the anger and not what actually matters. But all of these information, pain, shame, guilt, jealousy, gosh, those are the informative ones. And so if we can build those muscles, and I mean, I'm biased, I think everything comes down to fear, but I see those as being masks of fear. And if we could start to learn from them and actually listen to what they're saying beneath the cruel piece,
Yeah.
then it's telling us what matters to us, what's important, what we might be missing out on, what we're not living into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you're talking, I'm even thinking, gosh, I think almost every single second of every day, people start with what am I afraid of? I mean, I don't think consciously, but I think when we're in the grocery store, I think we're walking by fear-filled people and we're one of them. You're just really inspiring thought. And I'm considering that, we're so primal as people. Belonging is such a primal um uh, impetus.
Yeah.
And I think part of fear is that fear of not belonging and figuring out, well, how am I going to, fit in with the pack?
Right.
And you can surrender a lot of yourself when you're doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can also attract what isn't your pack if you're not being who you are.
Well, that's such a good point too.
It's an interesting piece, but so I kind of want to pull two threads through that you mentioned there, but fear is contagious. I think more so than any other emotion that I've witnessed. And so we live in a time where there's a number of things that one could be anxious about. So one thing, going back to the, how much impact do we have elsewhere versus ourselves? One question I have people ask themselves is this fear mine? Make sure that, because whether it's something you hear in the news, you read, you sense someone else experiencing a story, it's so easy to pick up that energy and then be in a loop yourself.
Yeah.
So the first question is just, is this fear mine?
Yeah.
Okay, now if it's mine, now I can create a safe environment to go and explore that and what information it has for me. Again, curiosity is something that moves us from our amygdala to our prefrontal cortex. We can't be in fear and curious at the same time. So that's a very helpful tool to then start to mine your own fear. If I come back to what you were saying, yes, that notion of belonging is wired into us, which is why one of the most powerful, the fears that I see the most is the fear of rejection. And those two go hand in hand. However, the way that I look at rejection is really redirection.
Well, I like that.
There are 8 billion people in the world. Do you want all of them to like you?
Right.
Do you want to like all of them? There's not enough time for all of that.
Yeah.
And so if we understand that, actually, to an extent, it's almost like force and flow. And rejection to me is it's helping you discover your yeses. That's not the end point. It's taking you somewhere different. It is kind of a redirection. And then again, to the point that you were making, if your efforts are in trying to be liked by everyone, I'm not sure how connected you are to who you are. And I think that when you are who you are, your path, be that relationships, your profession, where you're meant to live, that presents itself to you when you are who you are.
Yeah, great point. And you're certainly not even connected to them, because if it's all built on this really shaky and inauthentic foundation, good luck with that, right? And as you're talking about this, the world, I mean, it is a fearful world that we're living in right now for everybody. And I think if you wake up and become completely immersed, it's also resonating that fear is just not productive.
No,
It's not really fixing anything.
it's powerful and it's free. It is one of like, it is not being used haphazardly. There is intention.
Yes.
And which is why I don't think it has been talked about, because I don't think certain powers want people to understand how fear
Right.
works. On a micro is more personal, or a macro, more
Right.
cultural, societal level. Because I don't know anything more powerful than fear, which has been the case for centuries. I mean, this is
Oh,
religion.
yeah.
So much has been based on I think abusing the power of fear.
1,000,000%. This is so interesting. And you're just giving me so many ways to think about fear, honestly, than I had before we started talking. And we've even talked before. um, I am going to redirect us because I'm always curious about what somebody's consuming, what they're doing. So, in terms of like either a book or a television show or a movie, music, what are you kind of consuming right now that's interesting to you?
Sure. So actually, it's one of my favorite books that I've come back to over the years. But every time I read it, I kind of pick up something different from it. Is The Alchemist
Oh,
by Paulo
right.
Coelho. And what I really love about it is it's kind of a balance between being what we're just talking about, that redirection, being open to more than we might know is possible,
Yeah.
and true commitment. And it's the balance of kind of that both of how do you hold on and let go? How do you put yourself into it and then see what comes back with an open mind? I actually have a sign above my door that it says "Into the Great Mystery."
It says
That just
what?
into the great mystery.
Oh, nice.
That just allows me to go out and not know, because one of the most ironic fears I think there is the fear of the unknown and the fear of uncertainty, which is
Yeah.
crippling for a lot of people. And the irony is everything comes from the unknown.
Yeah.
Every person you've met, every flavor you've tried, every experience, everything, but we've written this story somewhere along the way. And so by kind of inviting myself with that reframe, every time I walk out, I'm almost open to something that I'm not waiting for, I'm not anticipating, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, so good. I love that thought because I think I'm a bit, and maybe most of us are, I don't even know. I like control. I like to kind of anticipate and control. Probably that's rooted in some fear. And gosh, by the time we're done talking, Guryan, I'm going to think every single thing originates in fear.
I do, but this has been my focus. But again, like, what a gift if we can start to form a relationship with it and then see what it's showing us, because that invitation, that control, there are some elements in your life where that might be really helpful, and then there are some where you might be limiting yourself. And so it's not, I don't believe in light switches, and I actually don't believe in binary thinking. So you're not this way or this way, it's an and spectrum, it's a dance. So where can you dial it up and where might you dial it down?
So a question about like a guilty pleasure. What is a guilty pleasure? Something that, I don't know, you either watch or read or do that you just enjoy.
I wish this one came easier to me. I am pretty focused with my time, although I have just discovered not that far away, there's these coconut chocolate chip macaroons at this cafe that's not far. I don't allow myself them often, but that's been a fun splurge. And then I guess a show I really enjoyed lately was called The Good Place.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah.
That is like an unguilty pleasure because I think I might have watched it at least twice.
Mm.
And I resisted it for a long time. And then I love it. I mean, it asks such big, huge philosophical questions.
It does. Yeah.
Plus, there's something, I don't know, when the world does get chaotic, there's something I found peaceful, strangely enough, about that show for some reason, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, but here, we're talking about kind of division and that element and the notion of doing good by others. It feels like there's kind of a pull to that connection and not to tie everything back to fear, but I think that it is the pathway to doing well, but to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because all that lack that is to your point about we don't listen to ourselves so young. These are the things that want to be healed in ourselves. These are the
Yeah.
things
Oh my
that
gosh.
this is doing good for us. And then I think when we have capacity, I think the old adage, hurt people hurt people. I think there's a lot of people in pain right now. And because we have not been taught how to be with our pain,
Yeah.
it's easier to throw wounds than it is to heal them. And so there's something about that show, I think, and just the watching of people wanting to do good for others that
Yeah.
may have been appealing.
Yeah. 1,000%. So back to what you just said about, you're not just, your life is not filled with guilty pleasures. Have you always been like disciplined and structured in that way? Is that just a part of who you are?
Yeah, it is. Yes, I definitely have always been disciplined. What was a gift for me was when I found there was a time in my life I felt plagued with purpose,
Yeah.
which is a funny thing to say.
Yeah.
But
I get it.
I knew that I was purposeful. I didn't know what my purpose was. And so there was a time that it was very challenging for me when I found my passion, which is this work, which I had no idea would have been fear. I remember the first time I told my mom this is what I was going to do, and she just looked at me and thought, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
But once like going back to authenticity, right? This
Yeah.
is who I am. This is what I'm meant to do. This is what I'm here to be in service to.
Yeah.
And so when that clicked into place, it doesn't feel like determination. It doesn't feel like workaholic. It doesn't feel like anything. It feels like this is what I'm here. I want to be spent. I want to be spent and used, giving what this, because this work enlivens me. And it's so amazing that I watch people step into their own sense of freedom. And so the determination now actually feels generative for me. And yeah, I think I came from two self-employed parents, and I think that really helped to see that yet you can create what you want if you put yourself into it.
Yeah.
And so that was probably a helpful model as well.
Yeah. I mean, entrepreneurs must be proactive. You have to, it's part of it,
Right.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. What you're also telling me indirectly is a directive. I almost feel like I should take every single morning, ask what I'm feeling fearful about, and then invite the lesson in,
So I'm going to give you and your listeners two more tools, but it's really, so there's three ways that we can move from our amygdala, that fear center, to our prefrontal cortex. So the first was curiosity. I mentioned those two questions you can ask: what is true and what am I telling myself is true? The second is gratitude. Gratitude gets thrown around a lot, like it's hippie or woo. It's actually been shown that when participants express gratitude, all of the brain activity is in their prefrontal cortex. There was a study out of the USC Performance Science Institute. So taking stock of our assets, what you're grateful for, which isn't always happy or good things. Sometimes it could be hard feats and accomplishments. But that's a great way to move. And the last is kind of what we were just alluding to, but purpose.
Yeah.
Purpose can be a big, scary thing if you don't know
Yeah.
what it is. Purpose can also just be intentional living.
Yeah.
It can be about parenting a certain way. It could be having a garden look a certain way. It could be a whole number of things. But one element there, I hear a lot of people will say, why me? I can't, like, why should I put myself out there? Somebody else can do this better. And one line I use there is, my why is bigger than I. When I started this work, as I said, I have a lot of fear and I was terrified. And when I sat down on that first client, I remember thinking, oh my, what am I, why me? What do I have to offer? And then I came to, well, my why is bigger than I. If I can reach one person out there and have them have a different relationship with their fear, then my discomfort is worth it.
Yeah.
So those three elements, and the first thing that you're saying is the most, we have to understand what our fears are. And
Yes.
then we can start to understand, then we can see the information they have for us and be really careful with that. Like what I started with Gretchen, I'm not good at. The more specific you can be with listening to your fears, the more you can actually start to translate the information that it has for you. Not just the negative, actually go into the specifics of the story that it has for you. And that's kind of where you can start to navigate that pathway through.
So what do you do regularly to invite joy in your life?
Mm-hmm. So I've actually just recently begun to, I don't know that joy was something that I prioritized for a long time because I was dedicated, because I was building. And now joy is a non-negotiable. Joy is so important. And I actually think that joy isn't just something that happens into our life or not. I think we can choose. I think we can choose that joy, whether that be with people I surround myself with. I have a great relationship with nature, and every time, whether I'm in the woods or I dive in the ocean or whatever that is, that really resets and brings a sense of peace and joy. I love dry wit. So I have a lot of friends who definitely keep me, I would say, on my toes, sharp and laughing. So yeah, it's kind of the simple things, I would say, that bring me the most joy. I love the farmer's market too.
Oh, here's the thing about me and the farmer's market. I was about to tell you, Guryan, that I too love the farmer's market. But then I realized that my relationship with the farmer's market is that I'm always planning to go.
Okay.
Or I drive past it and go, oh, that's right. I should go to the farmer's market. So that's aspirational for me.
All right. Well, we should check back in and you should let me know, because it has community. It connects us to the earth. There's like when you taste food that's just off the ground, it doesn't actually need season. I kind of see it as my health insurance. It's a real,
I love that.
Yeah.
As we kind of close out, I ask a question that I'm curious, because I've called the umbrella for SolFul Connections is SolFul Living, which I created back during COVID 2020. And I'm always curious what that means for other people. When you hear the phrase SolFul Living, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. And I thank you for putting this podcast out. I think that even just asking that question is so interesting for people. For me, I think it really comes down to intention. I had this mantra drop in once when I was on my path, when I was meditating one morning, and it said, if I knew what it looked like, I'd miss what it is. And it enabled me a way of, I always connect to what I think I want for myself, where I'm headed, what my North Star is. And then I allow that dance again of being open to, well, is that what's lining up for me? Is that, like, if I'm playing Legos with the universe, is that my click? And so soulful living is really, it's the balance of putting my intention out there and then seeing what this life presents me with and engaging in that dance.
I love that answer. And also, I have loved this time with you. I mean, very selfishly, if it were just my time and this podcast was just for me, I would listen to it again and again for some of the just gold nuggets that you share that I know are going to help me on my own journey. So thank you for what you're putting out into the world, and also for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Amanda. I love your questions. I love all of our conversations, and I hope we have more.
Thanks. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Thank you for being a valued part of the Soulful community. Thank you to William Aronson for writing, recording, and producing the Soulful Connections theme song. And finally, always know you're not alone. We are connected. We're all in this thing together, and you and your story are important. Let's just keep on connecting.